Mind the gap.
Welcome aboard, commuters, and this is my first of a 100-part series entitled Build the Millennium Falcon, published by D. Agostini. Now before we begin, I bought this project and I bought it because it looked a quality build. I've browsed at a few YouTube videos from other builds. It looks fantastic, but one thing I do want to show you is the absolute sheer size of it. Now this is the blueprint that comes with the magazine, and this is an actual size. Now normally I like to put things on my desk and take photos. This was so big I actually had to put it on the bed. Now to get an idea of the sheer size of it, if you were to take 9 average sized magazines, say TV guides or A4 pieces of paper, lay them all out 3 by 3 all in landscape, that is the size of this model. It is absolutely gigantic. So on the reverse of the blueprint you have smaller sections of it, and these are actually printed in half scale. I won't go into these in detail because these will come up as and when we complete various opponents, but just here's some images for you. Okay, so for the benefit of those who have never seen one of my part work videos before, I always begin the magazine by, I begin the video by looking through the magazine, and then I check any parts that come, make sure they're all correct, and then I begin the build. I also run a rating system, and out of 50 points I rate the issue, and then from issue 2 onwards I combine those scores to give an overall average score. So the marks are out of 50 and they come in 5 categories, and the first mark is the overall feel, and what this is I will have a look at the magazine without even opening the magazine. I will rate it out of 10, call it gut feeling, call it whatever you like. How much does that magazine excite me? How excited am I to have that in my hand? The next rating is build time, which is I'm looking at about half an hour work for each part, and I rate therefore marks out of 10, so it's 1 point for every 3 minutes of build time. Now where the build time is less than 30 minutes, I will round the build time up to the nearest 3 minutes. Then I actually count the parts, and I'm looking for 10 parts to score 10 points. However, things like screws, regardless of how many screws there are, that will only ever score 1 point. And where there's parts that are identical or near identical, they will score 1 part. So for example, in issue 1 you have part number 6 and 7, which is the left and the right mounting plates. They combine to score to make 1 point. Parts 11 and 12, the hull frame TF1 and TF2, they will combine to make 1 point. And there are 1 pack of screws which has 4 screws in, so that will combine to make 1 part, 1 point. So this magazine does still score 10 out of 10. I forgot to say actually the overall feel was a 10 out of 10, and the total build time was 18 minutes, so that does score a slightly lower score of 6 out of 10. The last 2 areas which I tend to reveal the score towards the end, one is the instructions. Now if I find this a complicated build where perhaps I feel the instructions could have been clearer, that will lose it 1 mark, and it does begin with a 10 and it works downwards. and just like instructions, the problems, that begins with 10 out of 10, and for each problem I find with a part it loses 1 mark. Problems such as can't get the screws in because there's paint in the screw holes, where I've had to do extra work. Things where perhaps the paint hasn't been, a particular part may not have been painted properly, regardless of whether it's on a part that shows or not, because remember, this is 100 part work. We don't know in part 1 or 2 if that part is actually going to be on show or not towards the end. So what I'm going to do now is we're going to get on with the build. I'll explain everything as we go, and I'll show you photos at each stage of the build. So one of the first things that we receive is the outer hull plating. Now we won't actually be doing anything with this, although I did want to show you because I felt that the weathering on this was absolutely amazing. So yeah, we'll just put this part away. We'll keep it wrapped up to sort of prevent the dust from getting in, and we'll move on to the cockpit bulkhead. So for this part we need to, it's a 4-part instruction. We have the actual cockpit instrumentation is printed on a self-adhesive sheet, and then we line that up onto the instrument panel, we stick it on, and then we test fit it with the cockpit base. Now I did make a slight cock up. I did get this slightly out of alignment, and in order to make the cockpit base fit, I just need to just ever so slightly trim away at some of the holes. You will see that there's holes lined up. Now one thing that I've learned since this build, if you actually make yourself some guides, you'll see that there's 2 lines at the bottom, 2 holes at the bottom. If you you get something of that size, pop it through the sticker and pop it through the part, you should be able to line it up more accurately. However, I don't think I ruined the whole build by getting it slightly wrong. The adjustments, I don't think they spoiled it too much. And I'm really not unhappy at how that turned out. Okay, so finally we do the quad laser cannon assembly, and this is a 10-part process. Photos are very good, and it went together quite well. I found that the actual cannons, they seem to be just pushed in rather than actually attached. I was a little bit confused at the fact that they came out, but I don't think it's too much to worry about. And so what I'll do is I'll crack on with the build, and I will show you the photos as we run. Okay, in the magazine, section 1, part 1 shows the parts laid out. Part 2, we need to hold the mounting yoke, and we just fit the left mounting plate. And then once we've done that, part 3 is we then fit the right mounting plate. Okay, once we've done that, we then we put in the lower laser cannon barrel, and then number 5 will be fitting the upper cannon barrel. Please note that the upper cannon barrel has a little square knobbly bit on the top. Okay, we then insert the screw at the front, and then once we've put that in, we put the other 2 screws in, and then what follows is the entire build, speeded up. So yeah, enjoy the build. Okay, so the final two elements of the scoring is the instructions. To be honest with you, I don't think they could have made the instructions any clearer. If I had to be critical, I would say that they were over clear. For example, putting the sticker onto the cockpit bulkhead, they did that in 4 stages. Whereas if I was explaining that to somebody, I would say take the sticker, remove the backing, and stick it carefully, lining up the holes, and that could be done in 1 or 2 parts. So that scores a solid 10 out of 10. And secondly, there were no problems. The parts were very high quality detailed. I really couldn't fault them, even if I was looking for something to fault them on. So that scores a solid 10 out of 10. That brings the overall build to 92%, which I feel is an absolutely amazing score. And let's hope it continues with this quality. Okay, so normally I would run through any comments that have been left on the previous video, followed by a little sneak peek at the upcoming issue. Obviously there's no comments been left because this is the first video, so we'll have a look at issue 2. Now I have noticed that for the first couple of issues they do actually show you what's coming in the next 2 issues. However, in later issues it shows you what's in this part and what's coming up in the next part. So we're going to ignore the bottom half, we're just going to look at the top half, and we can see some very nice looking parts coming. We have the holo game table, the laser cannon turret, the cockpit, and the frame parts. And interestingly, they give you a free screwdriver, which I find a little bit odd that they didn't give you that in issue 1. But never mind, there's a screwdriver coming, which I guess that this screwdriver would be suitable for these parts. So yeah, let's see what we get. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll talk to you all next week.